Welcome to Power Up Your Practice, the go-to podcast for law firm owners and managing attorneys working on the business, not in it. I'm Ruby Powers, your guide into the heart of law practice management, bringing you insights from leading legal minds, trailblazing attorneys, and expert guests who provide you with an actionable perspective on running your firm more effectively and efficiently. Prepare to open your mind, be inspired, and power up your practice to the next level. Hi, everyone. I'm your host, Ruby Powers, your companion through the ever-evolving landscape of law practice management. And thanks for joining Power Up Your Practice. In each episode, we get to hear something special about our guests, about either their superpowers, their perspectives on reaching success, and a deep dive focus on a theme. And today, we're going to talk a lot about leadership and culture. And I'm just really excited to have Anne Collier on today. She's the Chief Executive Officer of Arudia, and we have gotten to know each other the last year or two through the American Bar Association Law Practice Division, through various committees, and it's just been a great pleasure to work with her. So Anne, thanks for joining us today. Tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So I stopped practicing law a little bit over 20 years ago. I was a tax lawyer, and I always say, I hope nobody holds that against me. But for the last 22 years, I've dedicated my life to improving culture, leadership, communication, and collaboration. And
awesome.
I've got a very small firm in the Washington, D.C. area, but serve clients nationwide and sometimes worldwide.
So we were talking, getting prepared for this, and leadership is just really sort of your jam. This is what you write and speak about and help other firms with. Tell us a little bit what that means and what's the significance, importance to a firm about leadership.
Sure. So it all starts from the top, right? I have just to take a step back and look at like what leadership is. I'm remembering a program that I did for an association recently, and somebody came up to me and said, I've done a lot of leadership programs, but I never really thought about leadership training that focused on who you were being or how you were being. And that really sort of struck a chord with me, that I think that leaders try to educate themselves on what they have to do, which is of course important, but where I start with my clients is how are you being? How are you handling your stress? So I'm not just talking about, did you go for a run Saturday morning, or make cookies, which is one of my favorite stress relievers. But rather, in the face of difficulties and challenges, which of course the legal profession has been facing, probably since its inception, how do you handle the stress? Do you look at the situation objectively? Do you get impatient? Do you have those difficult conversations? I mean, as I sort of joke around, people talk about lawyers as, being sort of aggressive, they think about that litigator personality, but truly many lawyers and many people more generally shy away from having those difficult conversations with partners, clients, associates, and in fact, everybody in their life. So where I start is to help people understand, help leaders understand, what are the situations that really challenge you, and how are you going to be successful in those situations? So have a plan. And then of course I love the Eisenhower quote about, planning is essential, but plans are useless. And the point being that, you prepare, how to deal with your stress. And of course it's going to happen differently, but it's a heck of a lot better than walking into a situation not having thought about how you're going to deal with what your stress triggers are. And so with that in mind, you think about like, well, why is leadership important to a law firm? Why is it important to a culture? It's because leadership, how leaders handle their stress, really is the biggest factor in determining what a culture what happens in a culture. Are people happy? Do they feel safe? Is there psychological safety? Do associates feel like they can ask questions, ask the dumb questions? Do partners feel like they can reach out and ask for help with a client, or are they self-protective? It's that underlying culture is really the underlying personality or collective emotionality. And when a firm, and when the people at a firm, starting with leaders, but including everybody, regulate that collective emotionality, you have a successful firm and a great culture. And what that means then is that everybody, again, starting with leaders, the better they manage their fears and their stresses, the more effective they are. And the more, successful the firm is, the better performance you have, the better well-being, better retention, which is a big issue for everybody these days.
I've never heard it said so succinctly like that.
That was a lot of words.
No, I mean, just like how important the way the leader reacts to stressful situations or self-regulates or can impact. I'd heard people say, like, how you walk into work, the team can feel that they have that aura, are you stressed, and I know that, like, there's the benefit of working out in the morning, because then usually, like, for me, like, I come in calmer, and and then it permeates throughout the whole rest of the day. I mean, I'd heard, but like, in terms of just like people saying like how important it is and just how much this can impact. And we know that, like, culture is so important to any business or to any organization, and because you can't really see it. I joke, you used to think it was like having cake and tacos, cake on birthdays and tacos on Tuesdays occasionally, and you check that box. But no, there's way more to it, like you said. And then if that can if that can retain your staff, if that can keep your turnover low, then that has a huge impact on the bottom line, because so much of our time is wasted when we're having turnover, training, and all of those things. So it's sort of like, hey, leaders, if you take care of yourself and control your fears and anger and frustration, your firm will be pretty okay.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the thing too, when I do this work, authenticity. So I also, I do a lot of reading. It's a lot more fun than the tax reading I used to do. I haven't picked up a code or a set of regs for quite some time. But there's some great research that was done in 2012 and then again in 2022 about executive presence. Executive presence is really about, do people consider you leadership material? Mm-hmm. And what's interesting is the study also, both studies conducted by, like I said, American Express, Marie Claire magazine, and I think it's Goldman Sachs, break down executive presence into 3 areas: gravitas, which is how you're being, communication, what you say, and then appearance being the least important, but sort of the most important when we're talking first impressions. Mm-hmm. And gravitas being the most important, sort of being decisive, assertive, having speaking skills, all of that. But what's interesting about it is authenticity actually made the list in 2022 for an important leadership characteristic, important part of executive presence. So authenticity, and I say, it's okay to acknowledge your fears. In fact, I think ignoring the fact that you have fears about a certain situation actually paradoxically makes it worse, right? Because you don't strategize. And so there's also a lot of good research that shows that once you name an unpleasant feeling, it actually mitigates quite a bit. So, hey, I'm super stressed, and I'm really stressed about whether I'm going to land this client. Hey, I just said it, and then I'm thinking, well, wait, what can I do to, feel better about this? Already, I can feel it in my body. I'm more relaxed, and I'm being proactive about it. So being proactive about it, being able to have nothing that's taboo in terms of talking about, challenges, setting a good example for the more junior lawyers and staff in your firm, for example, a first or second year associate to be able to, reveal hey, I'm really afraid of letting you down. And then, to have that kind of revelation, and then I can say to the associate, well, let's talk about that. How can we make sure that you feel comfortable, that you know what you're doing? So that's such it opens the door to so many great mentoring conversations and, connection. The associates these days, they want to be connected. They want to work with people that they want to be connected to. And that's an important part of culture as well.
So how does one get started? Like we have law firm owners, partners, managing attorneys listening. Like what would be step one in trying to analyze the culture or improve it and sort of turn things around potentially, or taking control of the situation?
So great question. The first thing is I would say, educate yourself a little bit. There is a long form assessment that Dr. William Sparks created called the Actualized Team Profile. And you can take a short form, free version of it, and it will ask you for your email. And I promise you will not get any crazy spam. So go to A Alpha T Thomas pparachute.com. And it'll show you how your leadership style affects your firm when you're in a good place. And then it also will show you how your leadership style will affect the firm when you're stressed out. And it's the short form version. So it only shows you your primary leadership style. And there's, three that roll into your composite leadership style, your drive for affiliation, your drive for control, and the ability to drive results. And lastly, achievement, which is the drive to win through technical expertise. And then there are shadows associated with each of those drives. And what the shadow is the shadow is embedded in our subconscious, triggered by stress and fueled by negative emotions like fear, anger, and jealousy. So when you're in your shadow, these are the times when you're just plain not in a good place. You're stressed out. You may not have, slept well for a while because you're working on a case. You're not able to take care of yourself because you're working crazy hours, that kind of thing. And then when, it's like when little things happen, they cause you to be impatient. They cause you to be stressed out. They cause you to micromanage or not have difficult conversations. So knowing yourself and starting with you who you are as a leader first is critical.
That's why it's so important for us to know as leaders our shortcomings and our triggers and our know ourselves really well. Even just going to therapy and working through a lot of issues. Because what I'm hearing you say, it's making me think basically the culture can be dysfunctional if no one fixes it and lets it be that way.
Oh.
As in a dysfunction, you're afraid to voice what you're really thinking, or you're scared to be put down for suggesting an improvement, or whatever it may be, if they don't feel like you said, comfortable in the environment. And I, having lived in lots of countries, I really care about culture, because I see how just some little subtle things I picked up on it. I've lived in 6 different countries. So but people don't really talk a lot about what it looks like in a business setting or an organization setting. But it has I think if we all will sort of reflect, if we haven't really read and thought about this a lot, we'd see how much it has a big impact on whether we want to be a part of that organization and work at that firm or not.
Exactly. So the other thing is, think about what are the behaviors that are tolerated? Are there screamers at the firm? Hopefully not. But even though that's sort of the obvious, small H hostile work environment, what I see often, and I have a number of clients who are law firms and non-law firms, is the unwillingness to surface and address problems. Problems that persist year after year. Something's broken, but nobody says it. And so paradoxically, and this is part of the Actualized Leader framework, is the more you avoid dealing with something, the more that you're fear driven, the worse that it gets. You actually create the very thing that you don't want to happen. So think for a moment, like, I'm working with an associate, and the associate's last project was poorly written, missed the mark, any other number of things. But I like the associate. I don't want to hurt, his or her or their feelings. So I don't have the conversation, because I want to preserve the relationship, right? So, but then I don't feel like I'm worried about the associate being able to deliver good work products. So, I'm a little cagey. Maybe I don't ask, the associate to do as much work. And then the associate's wondering, like, what did I do wrong? And so then the relationship becomes sort of strained. And so what you've done is you've avoided having a difficult conversation because you wanted to preserve the relationship. But what you've created is a strained relationship, which is what you wanted to avoid. That's paradoxical intent, and that's all part of the leadership model.
I hadn't heard about the book that you're mentioning, but I had heard about Positive Intelligence by Shirzad Shamin. That I guess it came out in 2012. I didn't realize it was that long ago, but he has like a little quiz about your saboteurs, and sort of it talks a lot about like how the things that you learned, your techniques to learn how to survive, pre 18 are actually holding you back in your future, and in your present, and from your future, because they might have been like some type of a dysfunction or extreme response to your environment. And I'm sort of getting like little echoes of similarities to from what you're saying as well.
Yeah. My sister-in-law, who's a therapist, has said that we continue to replay unresolved issues in our adult life, over and over again. Like we sort of try to fix it. And of course it's unless we do some work on ourselves, it's not really fixed. I mean, I will say that I'm the only, I mentioned this before, I'm the only extrovert in a family of introverts. So, and I'm also strongly driven by relationships, which means that for a big part of my life, I had really struggled to have difficult conversations, and work, got to see it in a different light through doing my own actualized leader work, which has been really profound, and get past it. So for me, I know the signs that I'm avoiding a difficult situation. I become sensitive, insecure, I become indecisive, and I become anxious. So once I know that, and I feel the stress in my body, I'm like, all right, I got to deal with something. So I am more effective because I've done this work. And I will say the other thing is the indecisiveness. I mean, when I be trying to make everybody happy, and sometimes you just have to decide, right? And so I have another client actually that I started working with, same challenge. So for the last like 4 or 5 years, or I should say about 4 or 5 years ago, I decided, all right, I'm just going to work on being more decisive, because it is affecting it. It's hurting me, like I said, driving my husband crazy, but also, the people that I work with. So that has been a great improvement. And I actually feel less stress making decisions sooner, rather than letting it fester and rattle around in my brain, because then that takes away the mental, then I'm not focusing on what I really need to do.
Yeah, I mean, when we take too long to decide, we're basically making a decision by delaying it, and usually making things worse. And then like the whole anxiety, like you said, of unresolved issues. So yeah, I think and then what's crazy is, like, as a leader in your firm, you're making decisions all the time. So,
Exactly.
it's like, but I catch myself, I'm like, okay, I'm deciding, but then you can maybe postpone the big ones, or whatever ones that seem to have a little bit more weight, or some pause that make you avoid it.
Yeah.
So like the avoiding conflict or delaying decisions, replaying unresolved issues. So everybody has these things, or some people
has their own constellation of them, right?
Oh, okay.
But the key is to know. So when I do a workshop, what I do is I have everybody go to page 147 in the workbook, and write down 3 to 5 stressors. And the truth is that if you identify what your 3 to 5 stressors are, every stressor in your life is some version of those 3 to 5, or just about, right? And then what you do is you identify, like, all right, which shadow, meaning which type of fear-based thinking is triggered. And then the key is to get yourself back to thinking objectively about what's going on. So in my, made up example about, the partner who is avoiding giving honest feedback to an associate, because we know that never happens, right? What you would do, what the sort of more self-actualized view and the objective thing is to say, like, okay, like I myself, I know that this is a stressor for me. So what do I need to do to prepare for this conversation? All right. So what I'm going to do to prepare for this is tell the associate why I think it's important. Like, hey, I really care about your professional development. So I want to sit with you and go through this memo. I want to make sure that we were on the same page. I want to tell you how I want to show you the red line and explain why. And so it might feel a little bit nerve-wracking or anxiety producing to get into that conversation. But once you're into it, you're working collaboratively to improve this associate's, skill set, which, I mean, in my experience, associates really want. The last thing, they don't want to be ignored. And they often feel uncomfortable asking questions because they know that the partners they work with are so busy, which is true. But then again, paradoxically, then they don't get what they need to give the partners what they need. And so, it's stressful and could be disastrous for everyone.
So I'd asked what do us law firm owners do, and you said first start becoming more aware of yourself,
right?
And learning more about this. But what's the next step?
Okay, then what I would ask yourself. So for without sounding like a sales pitch at all, I would recommend that you actually do some kind of a culture assessment. And you might have your favorite coach, consultant. You might just have enough insight yourself to at least identify what's not working, and then start to talk to your partners about it. How can we fix this? Bills never get out on time, but we haven't dealt with this issue, or nobody's happy with the compensation system, which actually might be a sign that it sort of is working. But you know what I mean. But you've got these issues that persist. So start talking with your partners about how to, about a process for resolving, the issues. Identifying, but here's the challenge with that is people feel, especially if you're talking to like the last managing partner or somebody who advocated for a policy, you want to make sure that you are approaching this with a really solutions-focused mindset, and you're prepared to deal with other people's, your partner's shadow feelings or negative feelings or fears about, or defensiveness, however you want to characterize it, about these difficult topics. If they were easy topics and they weren't fear producing, you'd have dealt with them. When they're difficult topics, you have to be prepared to have difficult conversations. And so doing some preparation on yourself so that you're ready to deal with other stress. And what I always say is, kind of ignore the pot shots. You don't have to respond to everything, but listen for what the key message is. Oh, we're on the same page. You agree that it's a problem. Hey, so let's work together on this and resolve this in a way that we're all happy with.
Well, there's a lot there. I could just see that, like, if you're a law firm owner, managing, or your partner, whatever, your associate, you're at a firm, and you're like, wow, there's a lot that needs to be fixed. It can sort of seem daunting to go out and try to fix it, because you probably need almost like a third party, non-biased consultant to sort of like help assess and sort of say things the right way, so that it doesn't, because there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of feelings, there's a lot of you don't want to
tiptoeing.
Yeah, there's a lot of tiptoeing, and and then it just gets exasperated when there's more stressful situations and everybody's like boom, 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 moving, and not pausing and just having a conversation like we're having. Like this, I just feel like time is slowed down, and I'm just sort of like really listening to what you're saying. I'm like,
Well, thank you.
yeah.
So, so we may have to have another conversation afterwards. But what I would say is, I mean, the upside to the benefit to having a third party come in that everybody trusts is that that person again has skill, presumably, in raising difficult issues. And my approach is always to like let's look at the objective data, right? Like let's look at this. So I use what I do when I'm working with, whether it's a team in the legal field at a firm or otherwise, have everybody take the actualized leader profile, the full version, have them all understand their stressors and what their shadows look like. You can't not see that. And then and then at the same time, they've taken the team profile. And so you can measure how the shadows, how these fears come up in the culture, discuss that, because you've got data to look at. It's not that somebody says it. And I've done quite a few of these, and invariably, if the leader is on board and willing to be vulnerable, you're able to have some pretty powerful conversations, because people have gone through, they've identified their fears to themselves. They may have shared them. They recognize they need to manage their shadow side, which is where the defensiveness and blame comes from. And then that sets you up then to have the conversations about how do we fix these things. Now, something that I want to go back to is, what you said about it, it can feel really daunting. So you have to make the commitment that you're going to invest some time in this. It doesn't just happen overnight, and be heartened that a lot can change with very little actions, very small actions that then accumulate, right? So even just communicating more effectively firm-wide. Yeah, we're coming up with a plan to, expand the firm. We'll keep everybody posted. We plan on, expanding in these areas. I mean, obviously with, there's a certain amount of confidentiality you want to preserve. We've got to, and then letting them know we have this group of, we've acquired a small, trust and estates practice. We're having these 6 lawyers come in. Then what you do is you have an event, you introduce everybody, you make everybody feel welcome and that they're at home. You make sure everybody knows the norms. If it's a 3-day a week in the office firm, that's great. But does everybody know that, yeah, it's 3 days, but if you have something else you have to do, then it's fine. Come in 2 days. You don't have to, come in on an off day if it doesn't work for you. What really is the dress code? It's those kinds of things. So it's making sure that everybody feels connected. And then there's also the piece about work. Are you paying attention to people getting the work experience that they want to get? And what I mean by that is, have you, and a firm at any size can do this. I mean, obviously it's nice if you have a big professional development department, but even if you don't, you just kind of create a form, you have conversations and you say like, hey, this associate wants to get some experience in taking depositions. Let's make sure that we do this in the next 6 months. Everybody's on the lookout for that kind of thing. Those are the kind of things that build loyalty, make people, associates, feel good about the skills that they're learning, and you're creating, you're creating your succession plan. You're making the associates more useful to you. So, it's a lot of intent. It's just being intentional. So, I'll just say the one of the shadows is about, fearing that you're not going to get the best results. You're not going to get the results that you want. So you push even harder. This is where impatience comes from, right? If I had a nickel for every time a lawyer told me that they didn't have time, I would have 2 rooms full of nickels, right? I mean, it's what it is. And it's all good. And I've said it myself. So I smile and I say that. And at the same time, like, recognize that when you're too impatient to take care of these other things, that you actually hinder your team and your firm's performance.
Yeah. I could see that. And because you're also showing that you're not making it a priority. And so they're reading into that
Of
as well.
course.
So does doing all this like group self-reflection, improvement, cleaning house, cultural work, like it probably can also result in some people leaving, probably, right? Or like because maybe they don't like the new way things are going to be, or and also there's probably like a lot of maintenance that needs to happen because probably it's easy to go back to old habits.
Yeah,
Or
it's I have a client who took over as CEO, and we call the old culture and the under the old CEO is the hangover culture, right? It's a hangover. New leadership, new expectations, more transparency, all of that. But still, there's these ways that people would work, right?
Mhm,
So you've got to be figure out how to deal with hangover, and it's not with an eye opener. It's generally it's being vigilant. Making sure that, key people are on board and bought in is really important and are supported. So coming up with a structure for ongoing support, which is
mhm.
where some coaching may come in. But your question about people leaving is an interesting one. And here's what I have to say about that. The new culture will be a healthier culture, but it can be the case that some people liked it when they could get what they wanted or hold
Mhm,
through bad behavior.
mhm,
And so if those people leave, you have to, and this is again part of confronting this as an issue. Is this person such a rainmaker that you can afford to let them go? Or are you willing to tolerate the behavior? I mean, you just have to make a decision. I'm not going to tell a client what to do, but I can tell you, if you tell me what outcome you want, how, I can give you the highest probability strategy for getting there.
Are there unique leadership challenges that law firms face compared to other industries?
Yeah, oh, most definitely. The very unique hierarchy in most firms poses unique challenges. So in most of the organizations that I work in, there's a CEO, there's a C-suite, there is an executive, and then like a VP level, and then management levels and staff. At firms, it's very flat, but associates don't usually report to one person. So that fluidity and that ambiguity is stress inducing, especially for the more junior associates. So you end up with challenges around cultures feeling a little bit detached. Again, like what I typically see is associates want more connection, they want more security, but that's harder to do when you don't have one person who's kind of responsible for your well-being and your learning and development. And then if you also, as many firms are short-staffed and don't have sufficient associate support to be effective, then you've got partners doing associate level work and they have less time to mentor. So that's a sort of a terrible chicken and egg problem as well.
Hmm. And how much time do you think a managing attorney or partner should be mentoring? How much time should be invested in associates for mentoring?
Oh gosh. Are you talking about
I
over
mean, a week, a month, or I don't know, whatever, or like how many like touch, because I hadn't thought about what you said, but I think that's true about that. Like what is better to have one direct supervisor or like at least a couple, but I get the ambiguity
Yeah.
of
So what I think works best and what I see works best is that there is a culture at the firm where um, partners and associates can talk pretty openly about,
like,
hey, this went well. This was an opportunity for improvement. I can't sit with you now, but let me sit with you next week and let's go over this memo that you wrote. Or let me debrief you on why I handled that call the way that I did. So the best mentoring happens as part of the work process and should feel very natural
mhm,
and sort of be not feel like a drain, because what you're doing is you're investing to get better work product in the future. You're investing in the associate, but you're also investing in getting better work product in the future. So it's hard for me to put a number on that. And what I would say is that a lot of firms have a model where somebody that they don't work with is a buddy or a mentor in addition. So formal mentoring and then informal that sort of happens in the work. So a once a month meeting with your formal mentor, ongoing mentoring as part of the work and part of delivering client service.
And what would you say if like an employee looked at the communication mentorship as like they're like micromanaging, or they're like taking it as more of a punishment or something like that?
Sure. Yeah. And by the way, I'm often hired to help people, and then they, and it's, some messaging has to be done if the person is defensive around, hey, this coach is not your person. It's really to help you because we like you and we want you to be successful. So first of all, there's a great book out called Thanks for the Feedback. How to receive feedback well, even when it's totally off base, and you're frankly not in the mood. It's got some like that. And it was written by Douglas Stone and Sheila Heen, who are part of the Harvard negotiation project. Book is really great. And there's also a podcast if you go to Coaching for Leaders, and that's worth a listen. That is about receiving feedback. I would share that podcast with the associate, but I'd also have a pretty serious conversation with the associate about, hey, if we're gonna work together, I need to be able to help you, and that's all this is. I want to invest in you. You've got you, but I'm getting, and I point out, I get feedback all the time. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time. I get feedback from clients. I seek out feedback from clients, from colleagues, from anybody that I can learn from, because we all have blind spots. So I think being very open and transparent, being confident in your, confident that in delivering the feedback helps. So in other words, not being nervous about it because the person has made you is either, here are the two reasons people don't give feedback: because they're afraid the person's going to cry, or get really angry, or shut down. So I guess there's three things that can happen. But the longer you want to give feedback on little things so that and also give positive feedback. That's a good management tool. Hey, this was really great. I really liked how you did that introduction. I thought your summary was spot on. And then what you do is you create this course of dealing where this is not a bad experience. I mean, yeah, you may get some feedback that was critical, but it's viewed in a positive light and in the helping light that it is intended.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
I had one partner say, we have to make sure that we don't give feedback when we're frustrated and overworked. That usually doesn't work. That's the other thing, is picking your time.
Well, that means you would never be giving any feedback ever, and then it defeats the purpose because
or you get good at it, right?
Well, Anne, this has been great, and I think one thing I've noticed working with a lot of law firm owners, managing attorneys, partners, all that, is that I think the whole delegation, management, leadership is really where we're challenged. Like we could probably figure out the law, and we can figure out some things about balancing the checkbook, but the part about just finding and retaining and growing the talent, it really also, it's so much to do with the up at the top and how we deal with things, like you said, and do we create an environment where people want to be and spend their time and flourish and grow. And I think this episode really requires a lot of self-reflection, if it hasn't happened already, and continual self-reflection on how we can best communicate and overcome our fears and overcome our unresolved issues. So I wouldn't be able to finish this episode without asking you a couple of questions, including, and I didn't warn you, what's your favorite board game or game in
My
general?
favorite board game. Okay, so I haven't played a board game in a long, long time, but used to love playing Monopoly. And
Okay.
yeah. So very old school with the fake money and all of that.
Well, it's
But
an oldie but a goodie. It's pretty much our most popular game, according to all of my guests so far. So we're gonna
oh,
keep a tally somewhere. But like now, there's so many different types of Monopoly, and you can also play with like little fake credit card, and you can also play online. Like there's my only issue with Monopoly was it just felt like it took forever. But anyway, it was interesting.
yeah, that's true. That's true. But I grew up in Michigan and went to the University of Michigan. So I actually like Michiganopoly,
Oh,
which is University of Michigan monuments and like the stadium and all of that. Go blue. But it's for those winter in front of the fireplace or rainy fall days that you've got some time and you just want to hang.
that's awesome. Okay, so next question is, what do you think your superpower is?
Oh my gosh, my superpower. Oh, I'd like to say I have so many, but I'm sort of looking at my horse in the reflection, and I think it's being able to stay calm, kind of no matter what. You know, I mean, I
Yeah.
can remember being on Picasso, and 40 deer like bolted by, and I could feel his heart beating, and he of course wants to hightail it out of there. And I was like, it's like, okay, I got to stay calm because if I get stressed, if I communicate stress as the leader, by the way, then
Yeah.
he's going to be stressed out and I might end up on the ground. So, a little self-preservation there too.
No, that's so true. Just from our family, our environment, of course, our staff, every people read that energy, and it's just important for us to stay centered and calm and be our best selves. And it just permeates through everything we do. So, thanks, Anne. Well, how can people find you, or if they want to connect or find out more about you?
Sure. So my website is arudia.com. So Arudia is the business name, and I created it myself, and it is the combination of Latin words to teach and to support. So arudia.com, and reach out to me on LinkedIn. So Anne with an E Collier, and then I think Arudia will get you to my profile because there's a lot of Anne Colliers out there.
Well, thanks so much, Anne. It's been great talking with you about leadership and culture, and just also about having worked with you with the ABA Law Practice Division this last year or so. And I'm sure a lot of people will reach out to you, and this will give me some time to reflect as well. I'll go read these books and do the little quiz. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us on this insightful journey today. Learn something that we can put into place in our practices. Your time and engagement means the world to us. So if you've enjoyed this episode and want to continue the conversation, you can connect with us on Power Up Your Practice Facebook group. And the book is coming out pretty soon. So stay tuned to our newsletter, and we'll see you next time. Thanks for joining us. Feeling overwhelmed by admin tasks? You're not alone. Many immigration lawyers are in the same boat. That's where Staffy comes in. Over 90 law firm owners just like you have turned to Staffy for help with legal, administrative, marketing, and client-facing work. Now, Staffy's mission to help lawyers find balance while growing their firm. With bilingual virtual staff and full HR support, they take the hassle out of a team management and focus on what matters most, your clients and your practice. I've personally benefited from Staffy's support with 7 virtual assistants of my own across various areas of 2 of my businesses, including my law firm. Now, schedule a free initial consultation with Staffy. That's stafi.cc, and use the code RUBY. That's RUBY for $500 off. Thank you for tuning in to the Power Up Your Practice Law Practice Management podcast. I'm your host, Ruby Powers, and it's been a pleasure sharing this time with you. Join us next week for another episode where we'll continue to explore insightful strategies for success. Power Up Your Practice with us. See you next time.